Nothing compares to the unhinged insanity of Selector-infected WIXOSS. From forbidden romance to Lovecraftian cosmic horror, it has it all, and despite the fact that it's nearly a decade old, I'm baffled as to why nobody has even heard of it outside of the card game anime community. And yeah, it is a card game anime, and those with the exception of Yu-Gi-Oh! And its multiple spin-offs rarely fare well outside of Japan. But Selector-infected WIXOSS hardly fits into that category at all, because it's actually a deconstructionist card game anime. What do I mean by that? Well, whenever a particular medium or genre has been around long enough, it undergoes a process known as deconstruction. This is when artists take the old conventions of a genre and break them down, usually for the purpose of critique, but it can also be used to push the genre or medium forward. And while there are many different ways of applying deconstruction, the most typical is to introduce a heavy dose of reality into said genre or medium. Alan Moore's Watchmen, which examines the idea of superheroes if they appeared in the real world, is the best and most popular example of this. Would an all-powerful creature like Superman be concerned about human safety if it arrived on planet Earth? Most likely not. And what type of individual would it take to put on a mask and fight crime at night like Batman? Certainly not a billionaire playboy. WIXOSS employs a similar technique, but instead of simply enhancing realism, it borders on pessimism. We'll delve deeper into that later, but first, let me make sure that we're all on the same page. In this video, I'll be talking about both Selector-infected WIXOSS and Selector-spread WIXOSS, because they are two halves of the same story. We'll treat them as a single series. This is significant because there are numerous WIXOSS anime, the majority of which are detached from the original story. And one last thing before we continue, I'm going to ask that you leave a like on this video and subscribe for more anime analysis videos. At the heart of every card game anime is, well, card games. It brings together all of the characters, solves their problems, and at the end of the day, it's the card game that dominates the narrative. WIXOSS, however, takes a much more character-driven approach. The plot is still structured around a card game, but battles are rarely shown and the rules are seldom explained. Instead, the game is used as a means of character exploration. Relationships are formed through the card game, just like in Yu-Gi-Oh! But instead of being a means for simply acquiring and growing friendship like Duel Monsters, WIXOSS breaks people down, and at times, destroys them. Some relationships benefit from the game, but nothing is black and white in this anime. Sometimes it's through a mutual love of WIXOSS that friendships are able to blossom. Other times it's hate and suffering that brings people closer together. Before we go any further, I need to give a brief overview of the WIXOSS card game. You see, in the anime, WIXOSS is very popular, but there's a secret version of the game that only a small fraction of players are invited to take part in. These players are called selectors. What makes this second version of the game special is the players are competing against one another for the grand prize of having a wish granted. The winner of this prize is called the Eternal Girl. It's kind of like the Grail War in Fate Stay Night, only the exact criteria for receiving the prize are unknown. But that's not all. There is a punishment that even the selectors don't know about. When a selector loses 3 battles, whatever their wish was, it is no longer even possible for it to come true. For example, if your wish was to become a concert pianist, something terrible would happen to prevent you from ever playing the piano again. Now that we understand how the game works, we can look at some of the characters and their motivations, starting with Kominato Ruko, the main protagonist. At the start, Ruko has no interest in games. The only reason she learns how to play WIXOSS in the first place is because her brother tells her it'll help her make friends. After Ruko succeeds in making friends, she continues to play the game because she genuinely enjoys it. Nothing out of the ordinary there. But when Ruko discovers the dark secret of the game, the punishment, she continues to play. This is problematic for a couple of reasons. The first is that Ruko has no wish. The upside is that she isn't putting herself in danger. However, she is potentially ruining the life of someone else every time she enters a battle. The second reason is because she has no wish, Ruko has nothing to gain. This makes it appear as though Ruko takes pleasure in stomping out other people's dreams. She rejects the idea when she is accused of doing exactly that, so she's probably just addicted to the game. But even if it's purely for the fun of WIXOSS, Ruko is still causing a lot of pain and hardship for the love of a children's card game. Either way, Ruko is depicted completely backwards of the typical card game protagonist, even though they play their respective games for largely the exact same reason. This reminds me of a victory line Yugi has in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links video game.
It's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game.
That's some good advice, but try telling that to someone right after you crush their dreams. Now let's look at some of the people Ruko meets through WIXOSS, beginning with Yuzuki. At a glance, Yuzuki is just a normal high school girl, but when her wish is revealed, things get dicey. Let's just say that Yuzuki has a strange desire involving her own twin brother. Naturally, I found this revolting and off-putting. The sister's desire for her older brother is undoubtedly the most irritating cliché in anime. However, WIXOSS's portrayal of the situation is flawless. When another selector learns of Yuzuki's wish, word spreads around her school, and everyone in the anime, except for Ruko who doesn't even understand it, reacts in the same way that I did. The rumor eventually reaches Yuzuki's brother, Kazuki, and he shares in this reaction. I love it because usually characters with this desire are romanticized and they live a happily ever after. In WIXOSS, it's depicted as a dreadful disease. When Yuzuki realizes that her secret is out, she enters a battle frenzy. In her mind, it's all but confirmed that the only way she'll ever get what she wants is if her wish is granted through WIXOSS. Yuzuki is fortunate in that it works, and her wish is granted. However, there's a catch. In the WIXOSS game, selectors primarily use one card to do battle. This card is called an L-Rig. In the hidden version of WIXOSS, L-Rigs are living creatures that interact with selectors both during and outside of battles. They can detect other L-Rigs, and this is how selectors are able to find each other. Now for the twist. When a selector becomes the Eternal Girl, her wish is granted, but immediately before that, the selector and her L-Rig swap bodies. The selector becomes an L-Rig for someone else to use, and the L-Rig is forced to carry out the selector's wish. Remember how everyone reacted to the rumor about Yuzuki and her brother? Well, it's not just a rumor anymore. Technically, it's somebody else inside of Yuzuki's body, so they're not really engaging in the I word, but it still appears that way for everyone else. In a way, it's even worse because the L-Rig isn't even guilty of doing that which she's being vilified for. It just goes to show that one person's fantasy can be another's nightmare. Let's talk about the rival, Iona. Iona is a fantastic villain in terms of concept. At first you're wondering what her plan is and why she's so desperate to battle Ruko. Then you start to wonder who you're supposed to be rooting for when it's revealed that her goal is practically the same as Ruko's. The only real difference is Iona's self-awareness as far as inflicting pain onto others in order to enjoy the game. So far, none of the characters have shown any malice towards their victims. But purpose isn't always the most important factor. Actions speak louder than words, as the adage goes. Even the minor characters have considerable depth. Chiori is the overconfident newcomer who rushes headlong into disaster. She declares, "It won't happen to me," when she learns of the penalty for losing because she's the protagonist of her own story. Akira is a less cartoonish version of Kaiba. She's rich, famous, arrogant, condescending, and isn't afraid to step on people to get ahead. Basically a total narcissist. In a way, it feels like WIXOSS is a criticism of competitive gaming. Back in 2014, when this anime was released, esports were still quite new. Technically, games like StarCraft and Street Fighter have had a competitive scene since the 1990s, but it wasn't until the early 2010s that esports started to go mainstream. Advancements in technology made live streaming more accessible in 2010, Twitch.tv was started in 2011, and things kinda took off from there. Well, that's only partly true, because contrary to popular belief, esports have never been popular in Japan, especially not in the year 2014. There's a lot to go into as far as why, so I'll spare you the details. In short, gaming is still seen primarily as an activity of leisure, and those who view it as something more are stigmatized. With this in mind, one could easily draw a parallel to selector-infected WIXOSS. Think about it like this. Ruko and her friends play WIXOSS together for fun. They discover a new version of the game with big prizes. They stop playing together because they don't want to eliminate each other. One of her friends is eliminated, and since the only thing they had in common was WIXOSS, she is now alone. Ruko's other friend wins the prize, but alienates herself in the process, and Ruko is demonized by her peers for competing just for the fun of it. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but I'm curious as to what you guys think. The irony of selector-infected WIXOSS is that it was created by Takara Tomy Toy Company for the sole purpose of selling a real-life trading card game. Was it successful? It's been around for 8 years in Japan and has recently been translated into English, so I think it's safe to say that the game is somewhat successful. But I'm curious, would WIXOSS have been more popular if it had a more traditional anime? Although it is difficult to answer this question, I believe the answer is yes. Don't get me wrong, I admire what WIXOSS did to the card game genre, but it doesn't make sense to create a series where everybody in the show hates the game when the show is created in order to get people to like the game. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching.